The day HOA Karen tried to ban my grandkids from visiting wasn't supposed to be dramatic. It was supposed to be a quiet weekend coffee on the porch, burgers on the grill, laughter echoing through the backyard as the kids chased each other around the oak tree my wife planted 30 years ago. I earned that peace. I'm 58, semi-retired, and I've seen enough chaos in my life working as a sheriff's officer for 2 decades. So when my son told me he was bringing my grandkids over for the weekend, my heart felt lighter than it had in months. But peace doesn't last long on this street. Not with her around. Karen. HOA Karen. President, tyrant, self-appointed general of community standards, and collector of grievances no one else cares about. I've dealt with difficult people before, angry suspects, stubborn criminals, drunk troublemakers, but nothing compares to the brand of entitled fury that lives inside this woman. She once tried finding my next-door neighbor because his garden gnome breached the visual harmony of the community. She measured grass with a ruler. She once held an emergency HOA meeting because someone wore Halloween decorations past October 31st by one day. So when she got it into her head that my grandkids were somehow a violation, she became unstoppable and unbelievably stupid. That first sign of trouble came the morning they arrived. My son's SUV pulled into the driveway, and before the kids' feet even hit the pavement, laughter filled the air. I opened the door just in time to have both grandkids run straight into Mariah, 6 years old and full of questions, and Mason, 9, already complaining about how long the drive was. "Grandpa, do you still have the fish pond?" Mason asked. "Of course," I said, "and I've got worms ready for bait." His eyes lit up like Christmas morning. Meanwhile, Arya tugged on my sleeve. "Can we bake cookies today? The pink ones?" I nodded and bent down. "I saved all the sprinkles for you." It should have been a perfect day, but then I heard it. The sound of sandals slapping against pavement. Fast, urgent, angry, and then her voice rang out like a dying trumpet. "Excuse me, excuse me." I closed my eyes for a moment. Of course, Karen strutted down the sidewalk with a folder tucked under her arm, her walk fast enough to send her bob-cut hair bouncing like a metronome. She was already scowling before she reached my driveway. She stopped in front of us, planted her hands on her hips, and inhaled dramatically like she was about to lecture a room full of unruly toddlers. "I wasn't informed that you would be hosting additional minors this weekend," she said. I stared at her. "I didn't realize I had to notify you." "You do," she insisted. Section 4B of the HOA visitor provision requires all residents to report extended stays of minors under the age of. There is no section for B. I cut in. She blinked twice, momentarily thrown off. "There isn't," she muttered, flipping through her folder. "No," my son added, crossing his arms, "because that's insane." Karen snapped the folder closed and regained her fake confidence. "Well, nevertheless, we have had noise complaints involving children in the neighborhood. We're implementing temporary restrictions." I raised an eyebrow. "Restrictions?" "Yes," she said with a prim smile. "We're limiting the number of minors allowed outdoors without authorization." My son blinked. "Wait, are you saying kids can't play outside anymore?" "Not without approval from the board," she said matter-of-factly, "and we cannot allow your grandchildren to be running around unsupervised." "I'm literally supervising them," I said. She waved her hand dismissively. "Well, I don't know that. And until it's documented," I took a step closer. "Karen, they're my grandkids. They're visiting for 2 days. They stay in my home. They follow my rules. And they are not your business." She opened her mouth, searching for some new imaginary regulation to weaponize. But I wasn't in the mood. "Good day," I said flatly, and walked the kids inside. But Karen wasn't one to let things go. Not even close. The retaliation happened fast. First, she put a neon orange HOA warning on my door, claiming illegal minor guests present. Mason saw it and asked if he did something wrong. Arya nearly cried. I ripped it down. Then, at noon, as the kids played in the backyard, Karen marched back over with a clipboard. "I'm issuing a temporary visitation suspension," she said proudly. My son actually laughed. "A what? A suspension?" she repeated. "Your children are not permitted to remain on this property until the HOA reviews." I stepped right between her and my grandkids. "Karen, this is your final warning. Leave my property." She gasped like she'd been slapped. "You can't talk to me like that." "I can talk to you any way I need to when you try to intimidate children," she sputtered. I'll be back." She stormed off, sandals flapping, muttering about lawless residents. My son turned to me. "Dad, want me to handle this?" "No," I said. "Let her dig her own grave." Because I already knew something Karen didn't. I still had friends in county enforcement. And HOA harassment of minors. That's a legal landmine. She was dancing on barefoot. But before I made any move, Karen escalated. She always escalates. Around 3 in the afternoon. While the kids and I were making pink cookies in the kitchen, I heard a loud bang on the front door. Not a knock, a bang. I opened it to find Karen, the HOA vice president, and one very confused teenager holding a camera. "We're documenting violations," she announced triumphantly. "What violation?" I asked. Your grandchildren are interacting with the neighborhood. Yes, I said slowly. That's generally what kids do. She ignored me, turning to the teen. Film this. This is an official record of non-compliance. The teen looked at me, mortified. Sorry, sure, she made me. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. Come in, I said calmly. Stop recording minors on private property. It's allowed under the HOA investigative clause, she said. There is no investigative clause. She looked at the vice president, who shrugged helplessly. Karen huffed. Well, there should be. And then she made her biggest mistake. She pointed a finger toward my front door and shouted, your grandchildren are not welcome here. Not in this community. And that was it. The line she should never have crossed. I saw red. Not rage purpose. I pulled out my phone. Karen, I'm giving you one chance. I said, leave. Now she folded her arms smugly. No. So I hit record, turned the camera toward her, and said, repeat what you just said. She smirked. Your grandchildren louder. She drew herself up proudly. Your grandchildren are not welcome here. Click. Recorded. Saved. Timestamped. My son came outside moments later, saw my face, and knew something had shifted. What happened? I'm done playing with her, I said, and that was the truth. Within an hour, I made 2 calls. One to a friend, still working in family services enforcement. One to the county attorney's office. Both responded the exact way I expected. Wait, she did what? Because here's the thing. Banning family members from visiting a residence without legal grounds isn't just petty, it's discriminatory. And recording minors without parental permission, that's a violation with real teeth. And blocking family access to a property you own, illegal without court involvement. Karen had no idea the wave she had just unleashed. The next morning at 10 a.m., a county vehicle pulled up in front of Karen's house and she panicked. I watched from my porch as she rushed outside in a robe and slippers, frantically waving her hands. Is this about the hedges? I told Marjorie I'd trim them. It's not. Wait, is this about the recycling bins? The officer held up a hand. Ma'am, we received a complaint and video evidence indicating you attempted to restrict family access to a private residence and recorded minors without parental permission. Karen froze like a deer in headlights. I didn't restrict anything. I was enforcing safety protocols. There are no HOA protocols that override constitutional property access, the officer said. We also need to ask about your statements toward minors. What statements? She squeaked. He played the clip on his phone. Karen's entire face turned white. I didn't mean it, was taken out of context. I was provoked. The officer scribbled something on his clipboard. We'll need to file a report and forward this to the county review board. She made a sound like a dying cat, and depending on how the board rules, he added, you may be temporarily removed from your role pending investigation. Karen grabbed his arm. Wait, you can't do that, ma'am. Please remove your hand. She'll let go instantly. The entire neighborhood watched from windows. It was beautiful. By noon, 3 things happened. Karen received a formal citation. The HOA board held an emergency meeting, and every parent on the block signed a statement supporting me. By 3 p.m., the board voted. Unanimous removal of Karen as HOA president. Immediate suspension from board activities for 90 days. Mandatory behavior review. When the vote was read aloud on the community website, the comments section exploded. Finally, about time. She had it coming. Leave those kids alone. And for the first time, I felt the neighborhood take a breath of relief. That evening, as my grandkids roasted marshmallows in the backyard, Karen walked over. Not storming, not yelling, not armed with her clipboard, she walked slowly, head down, shoulders small. I need to apologize, she said quietly. I stared at her. She swallowed hard. I went too far. You did, I said plainly. She nodded. I thought, if there were kids around, they'd make noise, and the grass would get trampled, and things would get messy. They're kids, I said. Messy is part of life. She looked up at me with tired eyes. I don't have grandkids, she whispered. I don't really understand. Something softened inside me, not forgiveness, not sympathy, but understanding. You don't have to understand, I said. You just have to respect people. She nodded slowly. I'm sorry, she repeated. I accept the apology, I said, but the consequences stay. She lowered her head again. I know. From that day on, Karen changed, not completely, not overnight, but she stopped harassing people, stopped measuring grass, stopped lecturing neighbors. And most importantly, she never spoke a word against my grandkids again, because she learned something she never forget. You don't mess with a grandparent. You don't mess with a family. And you especially don't mess with someone who spent 20 years enforcing the law. She tried to ban my grandkids. She regretted it fast.